Ohio State and Michigan, two programs that I'm sure would be happy to get a couple more flips as the big day approaches.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating rivalry because it's 365, and it's been kind of a tale of two programs. Obviously, Michigan having won the last two, this most recent one in Columbus, and it was not pretty. Ohio State currently the number 5 class at the time of us being live. Who knows if that changes? They have 20 commits, first in the Big Ten. Michigan, Big Ten champions Michigan, are 4th in the Big Ten, behind programs like Michigan State currently. They're they have number 22 class, 19 commits overall. What is the state of recruiting for both these programs right now? Kind of break it down for us where Ohio State stands, where Michigan stands going forward.
Really weird dichotomy taking place
Very
here.
weird.
Because
Very weird.
You would think that Michigan, being the program that they were this year, finally getting over the top, making the playoffs, being a dominant team, you would think that they would recruit a little bit better. This is almost like a science experiment because it's happening within the conference with two rivals and two teams that, perennially are big-time winners, but they're taking different approaches to recruiting right now. Michigan, and you can't really fault either of them because at the end of the day, what you do on the field is what matters most. Recruiting, yes, it does matter because it's the lifeblood of your program. But Michigan's taken the approach of buy low, sell high, meaning maybe take some recruits that are 3-star prospects, but build them up into 5-star type players on the football field. Ohio State has not changed their approach to recruiting. They're going to go out and they're going to try to land the best player at every position and do what Ohio State does, and that's finish with the top 3 class in America. Right now, sitting at 4 or 5, but threatening. They still have some big-time targets on the board. We'll talk about that in a minute. Whereas Michigan, on the other hand, they're not really going to finish strong.
No, it doesn't look like it.
They got top 200 DB Jair Hill on the board. They have Hayden Moore on the board. They don't have any 5-stars. They might flip one from UF. He's a middle-of-the-road 4-star DB, UF commitment, Aaron Gates. But they don't have what Ohio State has still remaining on the board. That's 5-star edge Damon Wilson, 5-star defensive lineman Mateo Uiagalelei, and then they go out and they flip 4-star quarterback Lincoln Kienholz yesterday from Washington. So you kind of see what's happening, and I don't know exactly how it's going to shake itself out. We're not going to know this year. We're not going to know next year. But in 3 to 5 years from now, it's going to be really interesting to go back and look how this all shaped up because you have two teams using distinctly different strategies to recruit right now.
And Brian Hartline, receiver coach for Ohio State, is just on the trail. I mean, look at who they have in the receiver room: Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis. They have got a wealth of riches at the position group alone. And I think in some respects, that's why there is such a gripe from the Ohio State fans for the last 2 seasons. I mean, it's never okay to lose to your rival. I don't care who it is, but Ohio State and Michigan, Ohio State fans are like, listen, we recruit better. We put up a ton of points offensively. Why are we continuing to fall short to that other team? And for Michigan, I think they do what great programs do. Like you already said, they evaluate well and they build internally. They develop guys that look very different from when they get on campus to when they get off campus. And so some of that is upstairs, but I think a lot of it too is strength conditioning. And far be it for me to question what Ohio State does from a strength conditioning standpoint, but I'm just saying it's very evident that Michigan has gotten more out of their lower ranked classes, on the field at least, than Ohio State has at least the last 2 seasons. So kind of riffing on that, or did you have a point you want to say there, Josh?
Like I said, I find it really, truly fascinating. I think a lot of it comes down to NIL. I think we might talk about that in a little bit, but we're going to see. I mean, what do you think? Do you think what Michigan's doing is sustainable? Can they go on a run where they continue to beat Ohio State and dominate that conference, or do they need to recruit more like Ohio State?
Yeah, I think the hope would be, hey, as we get more competitive, as we start to stack up these Big Ten championships, as we continue to prove, hey, we are actually the big dog in this rivalry, at that point you can sell to recruits, hey, why are you going to Ohio State? We beat them every year. Why do you want to go to Ohio State? Why don't you come play for us? So I think the hope would be, okay, we've gotten the results. We always say the proof of concept is there. Now if you're Michigan, start to parlay that onto the recruiting trail. But the thorn in their side has kind of been, a thorn in the side maybe is the wrong word to use, but the negative recruitment against them has been, well, why do you want to go there? Their head coach might go to the NFL next year. He might be gone. I mean, how much of a thorn in their side has that been?
Not as much this year as it was last year. I think this year, the thing that's really hurting them is the talk about NIL opportunities. Yeah. And E.J. Holland of our Michigan site at On3 has done a phenomenal job of laying that out much better than I could. But the fact of the matter is, Ryan Day came out and said, hey, we're going to need $13 million next year to continue on with this roster. And that's not Ryan Day begging for money. That's just the reality of the situation right now with college football. Whereas on the flip side, Michigan has not really delved into the NIL world as heavily as some other programs. But if they're having success on the field, it's kind of hard to say we need to do more.
Yeah.
But you look at what's happening down the stretch, Ohio State adding big pieces. Michigan is actually losing big pieces. Collins Etchimpong, Michigan's top-rated recruit in the 2023 class, he's a big-time defensive lineman, flipped to Miami.
That's
Miami's
tough.
a program that's not even in making a bowl this season. So why would he flip to Miami? Well, we know what Miami's doing with the NIL. We know that they have opportunities. John Ruiz, Mario Cristobal, tag team partners down there in Coral Gables are cleaning up. And this is a recruitment that I did not expect to see, a flip from Michigan in the playoffs to Miami, who's basically on vacation right now.
Yeah, and my feel on that would be I think it's going to take maybe a couple of trips to the playoff and playing a team like a Georgia, playing a team like an insert NIL power here and seeing, okay, we need to sprinkle in the NIL to get over the hump. Because you have former players from, Cade McNamara to Eric All that transferred to Iowa, which is, just to be real, a lesser Big Ten program. Not to say they can't get back to being a relevant team within that conference, but it was a transfer down in terms of competition. And one thing that Cade McNamara, one of the record, and said was, well, I'll be careful how I say this, but essentially said the programs that you would think are good at NIL don't quite as much bring the juice, which felt like a pretty direct shot at Michigan, did it not?
Absolutely
it felt like it.
And if you're a Michigan fan and you're concerned right now about where things are with NIL, I say this to you. You can turn it around really quickly if they get some big brand dollars involved. Where the big brand dollar is going to come from or go to, they're going to go to the winning teams.
Yep.
So like you said, if Michigan can make a run in the playoffs, compete for a national championship year in, year out, all of a sudden, maybe you're not depending on collectives. Now you have Beats by Dre coming to your own players to say, hey, I want to. And then you get this money running through your program that is not from your boosters, but it's from the big brands, and it's going to players that deserve it. Then you get the whole proof of concept thing, and players start coming to Michigan. So maybe things aren't as far off as they seem, but there probably does need to be some sort of correction in 2024 for Michigan.
One thing's for certain, both of these programs expect to compete for national titles, and if it takes NIL to get them over the hump and to start winning national titles, I think that's going to be a situation where their hand does get forced eventually to that direction. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.